Against a background of toned-down hues reminiscent of the tapestry cartoons, a grayish blue sky, gray trees, a pinkish stream crossing the middle distance, a gray-green foreground, the Duchess of Alva stands imperiously, a Spaniard and an aristocrat from top to toe. Her dress is resplendent simply by virtue of the artist's brilliant brushwork. The black skirt sparkles with ribbons. The gold and yellow bodice gleams through the lacy mantilla, and a red sash fringed with gold encircles her fashionably slim waist. Goya had fallen in love and spent happy months with his hostess in the sunny country. Yet the passion with which he laid claim to her person as expressed in this portrait was not to last. Goya was about 51 years old and stone deaf. The Duchess only 35 and independent and capricious. She died in 1802, some say mysteriously of poison. Had it not been for Goya's brush, this famous femme fatale would have long since been forgotten. Slide, please. A change of pace for Goya were the frescoes in the church of San Antonio de la Florida in Madrid. This is a detail from the frescoes of St. Anthony raising a dead man. The impact of the frescoes on the casual visitor is limited because they are painted high in the cupola and the spandrels of the narrow, dimly lit church. Since detailed photography has brought them closer to our eyes, we must marvel at the painter's sprightly imagination. Without elaborate preparatory drawings or oil sketches, he painted freely and quickly on the wet plaster, with joyful, light colors that remind us of Tiepolo, and with an abbreviated technique and deft characterization that foreshadowed the entire 19th century, from Delacroix to the Impressionists. Although seen by few, the frescoes of San Antonio are perhaps Goya's greatest and most painterly achievement. Slide, please. After the coveted appointment as first painter to the court in 1799, Goya received few royal commissions, and those only during the next 2 years. The king wrote from his summer palace that he wanted Goya to come and paint all of us together. Goya went and did preparatory oil sketches of the members of the family, which are unequaled in their vigor and directness. This sketch shows Maria Josepha, the oldest daughter of Charles III and sister of King Charles IV, with the typically long nose of the Bourbon family and watery eyes. She appears a kindly old spinster. Not even the large beauty spot or mouche, hiding a blemish or wart at her temple, nor the enormous dangling diamond earrings excite any social comment or detract from her humanity. Slide, please. One of Goya's great masterpieces are the Mayas on a Balcony. This painting is a splendid illustration of Spanish life in Goya's time. Then as now, the women spent many of their leisure hours on balconies, a common feature of Spanish houses, designed for watching the passing street scene. Looming in the background, like the sinister cats in the portrait of Don Manuel, two cloaked men hover over their lovely prey with a conspiratory air of which the spirited young women seem happily unaware. While one appears diverted by something she sees on the street below, the other is regarding us with a beautiful, cool stare, tapping her friend lightly on the arm to draw her attention. The sparkling embroidery of their dresses is done with thick pigment applied by rapid thrusts of the palette knife, which contrasts with other parts of delicate transparency. Slide, please. The Maha clothed, a young woman dressed in fancy national costume, is too often mistaken for one of Goya's masterpieces, while in fact her fame is based on extraneous circumstances. Arms lifted behind her head, she poses self-consciously on a bed of fluffy pillows and looks at us with saucy allure. The plump shapes of her young body are exhibited fully and are emphasized rather than hidden by the clinging dress. Shimmering silks and laces are painted in wonderful shades of cool whites and grays, enlivened by the pink sash and the mustard-colored sleeves of the bolero. And for better notoriety, is to be found in its companion piece, a picture of the same model in virtually the same pose, but undressed. Further, in a scandalous but legendary assumption that the model was done other than one of the highest ranking ladies in Spanish aristocracy, the beautiful Duchess of Alva. Slide, please. Bullfighting is to the Spaniard what baseball is to the American. Considered cruel by the rest of the world, the corrida is essential to the Spanish life. Goya was no less interested in the bullfight than his countrymen. One of the many legends which are attached to his youth is that he worked his way to the southern coast, earning enough money for his passage to Rome by fighting the bull as a professional. Such was the appetite for bullfights in Goya's time that often the arena was divided like a double-ring circus to allow two fights to take place simultaneously. In this picture, the excitement of the spectacle is expressed by the rapid, sketchy brushwork, indeed so sketchy that many have declared the picture to be unfinished. To indicate movement, the swaying crowd, the heat and dust, the typical bullfight atmosphere, he has employed a shorthand of agitated strokes and quick touches that can be called impressionistic. Whoever has seen a bullfight knows the dramatic effect of sun and shade in the arena, which Goya has brought into full play in the composition of the picture, contrasting darker and lighter masses. Slide, please. On the 2nd and 3rd of May, 1808, two bloody events sparked the Spanish War of Independence. Napoleon's general, Murat, and his troops occupied Madrid, while Charles IV, who had abdicated under the force of unruly circumstances, the Queen and her favorite, Gadbois, as well as the new king, Ferdinand VII, had been abducted across the border to France. When the young prince, Francisco, a favorite with the people, was to be moved from the royal palace to France at Napoleon's command, there was a small incident involving some women screaming and a gathering crowd that surrounded the waiting carriage and attacked the French escort. Shots were fired, and in a short time the fiery temperament of the Spaniards raged in wild fury against the hated invaders. The massacres inspired Goya's two large history paintings. Yet by comparison, the 2nd of May is an artistic failure, while the 3rd of May is one of the world's greatest masterpieces of painting. Legend has it that Goya witnessed the events. However, the picture of the shooting of May 3rd has the impact of an experience actually felt, of an instantaneous action seen and immediately set down. Unlike other paintings celebrating historical events, there is no rhetoric, no contrived symbolism, no traditional picture formula, no stale studio atmosphere. The brutality of the scene is conveyed with brutal directness and simplicity. Although the picture contains many figures, we perceive mainly two: the uniformed French soldier ready to fire, an anonymous power multiplied in a row of similar, angular, almost abstract shapes, and the Spaniard in the white shirt, his arms thrown up in a violent gesture of defiance and despair. The gesture implying a sort of profane crucifixion. It is an unforgettable figure, embodying the long agony of the Spanish people. Slide, please. This is one of the most aggressively disturbing paintings in the whole history of Western art. It's called Saturn Devouring the Sun, done in oil on plaster in 1819 to 1823. Saturn was one of the 14 frescoes with which Goya decorated the two main rooms of his country house, the House of the Deaf Man, which he bought in 1819. This one is the easiest to explain. The Lord of the Titans, or as he is known in Latin Saturn, is eating his newborn children since he has been warned that his sons would dethrone him. His son Zeus escaped the gruesome fate and eventually managed to do so. The intense action of frightened eating, the intemperate ugliness of jarring limbs, and the undisguised sensual excitement border on the ludicrous. Slide, please. A late work, a portrait, Don Raymond Subtué, is one of Goya's most modern portraits, a timeless and powerful portrayal of man and his humanity. No more shimmering brocades, laces, metals, and gilded furniture. No more decorative pleasantries. By comparison with this, Goya's portraits of the 18th century seem like figures from a fairyland. The world has changed, and we are here to face with a new reality. He is not posed in an elegant stance. He simply stands before us in the most natural, informal way, hands dug deep in his pockets, his bulk filling the canvas. A major force seems to emanate from him. Typical of Goya's last years, the picture is painted in few colors, mostly a somber black, strikingly heightened by the bit of red vest showing, and yet this restraint gives the effect of great richness and magnificence. Slide, please. The Milkmaid of Bordeaux is an idyllic picture of a young maiden who was painted late in Goya's life. The picture, with its pensive mood, is unlike anything else in his work. Almost square and rather small, it gives an impression of monumentality. Placed oddly low and heavily into the bottom of the canvas, the figure has a sculptural quality of massive volume. There is no milk pail, no background, no object to the girl's dreamy, tender gaze, only a wide, atmospheric sky. The wonderful luminosity heralds the future art of Impressionism and makes the milkmaid ancestress to the women painted later by Corot and Renoir. Slide, please. The second artist whose work we will see today is Eugene Delacroix, Delacroix. His dates are 1798 to 1863. As a student and young painter, Delacroix was closely attached to Gericault. Gericault was 8 years older, wealthy, adventurous, fond of high living, and knowledgeable about the world. After his companion's death, Delacroix abandoned this experimental slumming for his natural habitat, the brilliant world, where the upper Bohemia of successful actors, writers, and painters overlapped the established order of social position and political intrigue. Here he was admired and sought after, but even while he was still a young man, he began to withdraw into his work, seeing only the few people who continued to interest him as his own ideas began to crystallize. That the names of these people were great names, as for instance Chopin was an intimate friend, was only coincidental. Slide, please. Delacroix's career opened with an early success, Dante and Virgil in Hell, showing the poets crossing the Styx. It was exhibited in the Salon of 1822 when Delacroix was only 25 years old. The nude male in the water alongside the boat is especially inspired by Michelangelo and might even be the Adam from the creation scene on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Slide, please. Two years later, in 1824, Delacroix came into even greater prominence with his scenes of the massacres of Schio, of which the Academy made a scandal. There were routine objections to Delacroix's choice of a contemporary subject. There was an episode in the Greek-Turkish War where the population of the island of Schio was reduced from 100,000 Greeks to 9,000 in one of the most terrible massacres in the history of human cruelty. But what really appalled the academicians was Delacroix's use of color. Slide, please. Massacres of Schio had come to the jury as a fine example of sound, adequately conventional painting, and had been accepted for exhibition. But in the interval between acceptance and the opening of the salon, Delacroix repainted it. Slide, please. Painters were customarily allowed to retouch or varnish their work after acceptance, but it happened that Delacroix experienced one of the transforming revelations of his artistic life and was impelled to transform Massacres of Schio as a result. He had seen a picture called The Haywain, sent to the Paris Salon that year by the English landscapist Constable. Constable painted by juxtaposing spots of color rather than by blending them. Constable applied his colors in strokes of graduated shades so that the transition was made in a series of easily perceived jumps, juxtaposed rather than mushed together. The result was a greater freshness, vividness, and life to the color, as well as a sense of more immediate contact between the painter and observer. Slide, please. Delacroix once said that painting is a bridge between the thought of the painter and the thought of the observer. Slide, please. In repainting Massacres of Schio, Delacroix began the experiments with color that were to occupy him for the rest of his life and were to be enlarged upon by several generations of painters even into our own century. Slide, please. He then began a series of fairly large religious or historical works. This one, painted in 1826, was the execution of the Doge of Marina Faliero, and is fairly heavy and ponderous in its situation. Slide, please. As was sort of a return, not to allegory in painting, but just to a prior effort, the Emperor Justinian composing his Institutes. The color is fresh, vibrant, and strong, but the subject matter was not the meaningful immediacy of a contemporary subject to Delacroix. Slide, please. One that sort of retraces the outlook or composition of the early Davids, except painted in the more romantic nature, was the symbolic figure of Greece on the ruins of Missolonghi. It was painted in 1827. This sort of exotic, away-from-home atmosphere or subject matter was ideal for the beginning of the Romantic movement. Slide, please. Also, in 1827, Delacroix painted his largest and most ambitious demonstration picture, and the only one that was a failure with both classicists and romanticists. The Death of Sardanapalus. The subject reflects the vogue for Orientalism that was a strong element in Romantic painting and literature, offering as it did all the exotic color and savage passion denied by classical moderation. Slide, please. Jewels and great heaps of other objects are spread around in opulent confusion. The confusion was objected to, also the, quote, vulgarity, a favorite word with the critics at the time. Slide, please. Oddly enough, if any shortcomings are apparent in Sardanapalus today, they do not lie in its confusion, which is calculated, but in the excess of this calculation, which reduces the vitality of the frenzied subject. Slide, please. Sardanapalus has passages of superb painting. The flesh of the central female figure, the jewels, the stuffs, are as rich as even Rubens could have made them. But the total effect, while gorgeous, is more gorgeous than passionate. Delacroix himself was dissatisfied, and 17 years later, in 1844, he repeated the picture in a much smaller dimension. In the years between the two versions, he had brought his theories to maturity. Slide, please. Delacroix was not opposed to historical themes or classical subject matter. He reveled in both, with Catholic taste and liberal judgment. He was opposed to the sterility of the salon bureaucrats who tried to paint in the classic style. Nor did he condemn the efforts of the official artists to glorify the state. He was a patriot himself, willing to sweat and suffer for the traditional glory of France. His passion for freedom, which exemplifies the most heroic elements of French culture, was inflamed by the revolt of 1830, when the Republican cause of France was delivered from the Bourbon dynasty. To commemorate the deliverance, Delacroix, his imagination gloriously excited, painted one of his great pictures evoking the symbol of liberty, the sacred genius of his nation, to flaunt the tricolor and lead the veterans and the children to victory. Slide, please. In 1832, he made a trip to Morocco. From the silvery light of Paris and the civilized, emotional climate of that city with its pale and cultivated inhabitants, he was plunged into a world where he was surrounded by half-barbaric figures, golden-skinned or black, robed, turbaned, or naked, moving among strange vegetation and strange architecture. Slide, please. Everything was revealed in a blazing light, where colors were vivified and contrasts were exaggerated beyond anything Delacroix had imagined at second hand. In his diary, he mentions the sea a dark greenish blue like a fig, the hedges yellow at the top because of the bamboo. Slide, please. The sons of the Caïd, the oldest one, his dark blue burnous, caftan of a canary yellow, a Jewish, red skullcap, white drapery, black dress, heads of Moors like those of Rubens, nostrils and lips rather coarse, bold eyes. Slide, please. The almond trees in flower, the Persian lilacs, the little white house in the shadow amidst the dark orange trees, the horse through the trees, the red veil, the beautiful eyes, wax torches. Everywhere these notes were interspersed with sketches, quick, vivid, spotted with bright notes of watercolor. Delacroix saw everything he had ever imagined and more. Fantastic banquets and entertainments in the Sultan's palace. Local ceremonies among the people, weddings and funerals. Although he was in Morocco for a short time, it stayed with him for the rest of his life. Slide, please. Shakespeare's dramas provided Delacroix with many pictorial subjects, the moody Hamlet, the ardent Romeo, the violent Macbeth, which he treated in a variety of mediums, oil paintings, monochromatic lithographs, delicate watercolors. They also deeply influenced his attitude toward art. He put Shakespeare in the company of Homer and Dante and marveled at his astounding naivete, which made poetry out of commonplace details. Slide, please. In his later works, Delacroix's paintings are almost a farewell to frenzy. The Crusaders taking the city of Constantinople, painted in 1840 and exhibited in the Salon, typifies the degree that Delacroix's career had come at this point. From the very beginning, with the starting of the massacres of Schio, the characters are still there and are as moving as ever. But the struggles are now in the distance. The horror of death can even be read in the eyes of the horses. the composition is tied down by a strong framework, and it becomes sort of overbearing in this version. Slide, please. His Moroccan notebooks and his recollections were his storehouse after his return. Other painters might have been content to use the exotic material for its inherent color and novelty, but Delacroix was not interested in painted travelogues. And his Moroccan experience is apparent not only in pictures directly connected with it, such as the lion hunt. Slide, please. But also in the Rape of Rebecca, and slide, please. The Abduction of Rebecca, which is an incident from Scott's Ivanhoe. In all of Delacroix's other works, he realizes Baudelaire's remembrance of the greatness and native passion of the universal man. In his youth, Delacroix had shown a fondness for the diagonal composition according to the Baroque canons and to express dramatic instability. In this painting, done in 1846, he returns to the diagonal theme as in the last one. But here it is used to express the effect of ascension, of movement upwards toward a more ethereal issue, which now becomes the artist's preoccupation. Slide, please. St. George slaying the dragon, a small painting done in 1847. Slide, please. Delacroix was finally accepted to the Institute of France, composed of 5 academies. After 8 rejections, his 9th application was accepted in 1857, only 6 years before his death. Even so, the official world continued to snub him on most occasions. In 1861, he completed a set of 3 murals in the church of St. Sulpice. The superintendent of fine arts refused to look at them. The court and the world of official painting also stayed away from the opening exhibition. The St. Sulpice murals are likely to be the most praised by those admirers of Delacroix who like to see, slide please, as in his mural of Jacob wrestling with the angel, a symbol of the painter's struggle for the fulfillment of this admirable theory. Other subjects on the ceiling vault are so small and so ill lit that it is seldom noticed. For pictures, these are curiously static, dry, overstudied compositions. Slide, please. In the important salon of 1855, a room was set aside for some 40 of Delacroix's paintings, amounting to a retrospective of his career. He was elected to the Institute 2 years later, and he exhibited in the salon for the last time 2 years after that, in 1859, with 8 pictures. Toward the end of his life, Delacroix saw almost no one, remaining at work in his studio as a recluse, and still so glamorous a figure that when he did go out, he was followed in the streets as a demigod by the young artist, for whom he had become the symbol of revolution, independence, and integrity. Clear the machine, please.